Welcome to the Intimate Feminine, opening channels to deeper intimacy in love, sex, and relationships. Allow yourself to exhale and sink in as everything inside you becomes beautifully and sensually unfurled.
You're probably the most important person through this whole transition process as far as what I go back to and what I feel assisted me in transitioning and really seeing what was important for myself. Wow. And I want to thank you for that. It has continued to ground in my system every time there is something new that comes up. And I go back to a number of things that you and I discussed, mantras that I have created through our conversations that take me back to a very important focus of myself and what I want. And so I want to thank you for that. You were instrumental.
Wow. Thank you for sharing all of that. And so sincerely in the beautiful way that you do. I mean, it's not beautiful. It really is this deep truth of masculine energy. But thank you for all of that. That's really, really meaningful for me. And I'm so happy that I was able to, facilitate you becoming who you came here to be, that you were already on course for. But to be a support in that and to witness that has been an honor for me. And so it's my absolute pleasure to hear that and to have been a part of your life.
Thank you. Thank you.
So for everybody who is listening and tuning in, we sort of have already begun the conversation. This is Jacqueline Robinson for the Intimate Feminine podcast. And today I am joined by my husband of 30 years, George, our first public live conversation. And in addition to George and I talking a little bit more about what we have been through, we have invited honored and beloved guest to our space today. And that is beautiful Mel or Melissa Buffington. And we entered Mel's world. Mel entered our world in January of 2021. George and I were just a year after everything sort of broke open in our marriage and relationship. I listened, I was scrolling Facebook and Mel was speaking live. I remember it distinctly. I was sitting in my bed. George was out. We were on the tail end of a very wobbly place in our sort of newly developing way of being in relationship. And really, we were still in the aftermath of the destruction or the eruption. And I listened to Mel on Facebook Live, had no idea who you were, Mel. I had never really seen your name. I don't even know how we came to be friends or connected on Facebook, but I'm scrolling and you are talking, saying, and if you're somebody who has worked with mentors and you've sought to develop your business, your creativity, your artistry, and it's just not working, and it feels like that wasn't worth it or it didn't happen, I want to talk to you. I understand what's happening. There's something more here. All of these mentors you've worked with, all of this work you've done wants to culminate. And that, like, I remember sitting there listening to you. You began speaking that. And the other very potent piece was you talked about what you call future forging. And I don't remember you saying those words on that video, but I know now what it means. And it sparked something in me that I hadn't touched for a couple of years. This being who, like, I feel emotional now, and I was weeping watching you, somebody who understood what I knew was possible and had visioned and knew to be true, and in some ways was hovering on the edge of and waiting for the partnership that would blow it open. Enter Mel Buffington. So Mel, welcome. It's our first time. It's been probably a year since we all sat in space together. You and George and I, we spent 6 months. I would love you, as you bring your energy in here with us, to talk about you, who you are, what you do, and then we'll drop more into how you and George and I really began to create and clear and lay a foundation for a year later, the miraculous partnership and love and intimacy and creation and legacy that we are now. So welcome, Mel.
Yeah. Wow. What a beautiful introduction. You two blow me away every time I speak to you. And I mean that in the most sincere way. You know, George, with your vulnerable but direct sharing and reflecting back to me with gratitude, and Jacqueline, your introduction and your still felt sense of that moment that we, I believe, on a soul level, were meant to come together, was absolutely gorgeous. And I remember receiving your message, and I felt a spark as well. You know, I didn't know you, and I don't know what I say in live as I go on, and I speak, right? But I felt you, and I felt something there. It was just, oh my goodness, quite a journey from that point. And I can't believe that it's been a year. It's like, how many lifetimes have unfolded for each of us within that span of a year?
Yes,
true.
yes.
Unbelievable. But so to introduce myself for those who are listening, I am Melissa, or Mel Buffington, either one is fine. At this point, I call myself a soul embodiment mentor, and that's a term that I came up with a few years ago, but I really feel does capture the essence of what I do. You know, we're in this human experience here to not just live this human experience, which yes, absolutely is central, but to embody our divinity and to pull that soul level essence and energy through which we have a direct relationship with God or source down into ourselves, down into our being. And it's a very disruptive process. You know, you two had already been on that journey, certainly yourselves. And then we encountered, and typically I'm a major catalyst and kind of choice point for people to split off into, you know, either the same timeline they're on, or a devolving kind of timeline and spiral down, or to really accelerate in this new trajectory to what you called future forging, which is what I call this, you know. And in the New Age, they might call it 5D living. In Christianity, they may call it, you know, New Jerusalem, or the heaven on earth experience, or the rapture. But essentially what it is being so immersed in the present moment that you are creating something that's never been created before, and going about doing that in a way that has never happened before. So you're literally on that leading edge where time and space meet, and allowing creativity and creation to flow through you, this human, this vehicle, this vessel for your soul, and for, you know, God's work or the divine's work that wants to flow through you into the world. So you're walking on a path that has never been carved before. It is not work for the faint of heart. And it truly is the version of leadership that I believe is called for on this planet, because I think every single one of us ultimately is destined to be, or is meant to be, or invited to be a future forge. So anyway, I'm a soul embodiment mentor, and I work with tomorrow's leaders to help them connect and together rise and recreate all the paradigms and systems for life on earth to align with the frequencies of love and above. And what we do is a global mission. It's the evolution revolution, and it is about birthing those systems and paradigms outside of what I call the matrix. And there are many, many layers to that, but it's beautiful work. I work deeply from the inside out, from the soul and the self into the marriage, into the family. And that is really that foundation from which, only when that is purified and aligned and solidified, and all those soul contracts have really locked in, and people are being who they were meant to be, then comes the outpouring of the business and the mission and the impact and the legacy for the broader world. You know, that is that center point, that energetic sphere, if you will, that is amplified and magnified out then through everything that you do, and every dollar that flows through your family and through your system. So that's essentially who I am, and I'm excited for this conversation to see where this takes us.
I am too, because you and I have stayed in contact since our mentorship, that container was complete, and we are colleagues, we are friends, we are women who deeply connect and relate to each other. However, this is the first time you and George are reconnecting. And in me, everything you said is so true, because a year later, we sit here and so much of what we talked about with you, now we're watching it begin to blossom and happen. And it required us deepening in, and what has changed in the last year, and the pivot points we've come to choose, as you said, to choose. And so I would love for myself, all of my listeners will hear very much from me about all of this experience. I would love to hear more from George and somewhat of George and you sharing a dialogue, because there's so much I watched shift and change in him during our time and since then, that I know has roots in what you brought into our world. And I would say too, George's openness and willingness to choose something different, because well, you speak, babe, you speak, you say it.
Sure. So, really to kind of back up for a moment, I came from a very, very traditional environment, very traditional career. I was a banker for 33 years. So I was in the establishment. I was very, very traditional in how I saw life and how I commitment and how I saw marriage and partnership. The masculine demand goes out into the world, leaves everything out there in the world, and then comes home and really literally has nothing at that point. And that really is not sustainable. It's very draining to the relationship. And you continue to think that you are doing it all for the family, for your spouse, for your partner, but it only focuses on the very materialistic part of what our life has become. And it was a very challenging place for me to embrace change. There were a number of things that had transpired that had indicated that life wasn't as perfect as I might have perceived and assumed that it was. And it required me to look inside of myself. In the case of coming on board and meeting you, Mel, and establishing our connection with you, I will remember to this day the night that I came home after Jacqueline had spoken with you. And I saw this light inside of her, this excitement, this just exuberance. And I knew that it was something special at that point. I had never been in that type of environment before with you, but I also saw what it meant to Jacqueline and far as that connection. So it allowed me to open up to receive what was new in our relationship, in our partnership with you, in our relationship together, all of those kind of things. I go back to one of the first, I want to say, mantras that you provided to me, and I still use it today. I have a couple of them that I literally tape up on my mirror in my bathroom when I'm getting ready in the morning. What has gotten you here suddenly is what prevents you from getting to the next place. And I think that is a very important point to see that, okay, you've got to make some paramount changes to how you look at yourself and how you look at what you want, your legacy. I know we talked extensively about legacy, you and I. What you really want inside of yourself. Get quiet and really receive that. And you really very much focused me on those things.
Yeah. George, it's amazing as I tune back into when you and I first connected. I know it was challenging for you to make many choices and changes that you did. And you did them every single time with the utmost precision and courage and thoroughness of really scavenging within yourself and coming to what was true and right for you. And to remember that our work started with you leaving a career you had been in for 33 years. That was really central to your identity as a man, as a businessman, as a father, as a husband. Oh my word. You walked away from that. And it took a few conversations, but the power that that really opened up, the container that we worked together in, was indescribable. And everything that unfolded from that point was laid on that foundation of your courage and your decision. I really think that was in tune on a soul level to move into what your true legacy was, which wasn't this traditional role, as you mentioned, of creating a beautiful retirement account and checking all the boxes to make sure kids are well enough and wife is happy enough, and all of that's fine on one level. But as you referenced in that mantra, once we reach a certain ceiling, I use a Russian doll metaphor for this, like once you reach the outer rims of that identity that you're living within, you have to shatter that and blow it up and walk away from everything that you knew and were in the quest of what is unknown. And that is absolutely what you did, and what I was able to witness and help turn you back inwards throughout. Truly incredible, all that you did in that time period. And I think it's just such a beautiful thing that you're sharing this story as well. And we spoke about this deeply. This is a big part of your legacy, is paving that path for men, right? Like if you walked this traditional path for this many years and you were still able and willing to gamble it all, for the sake of your soul and for the love of your life and your family and your mission here on this planet, what other man can't be inspired and encouraged and held in the knowing that that too is possible for them?
I believe strongly in it for myself. And if that illustrates and provides an example for other folks, then I am extremely happy about that. My focus has been inside myself as to what I truly wanted at the end of the day. Did I want the career? Well, of course. Did I want the different value that presented? But it was all outside of me. It was not inside of me. And truly looking at it inside of yourself really helps you have that strength to make those changes that are necessary for yourself to embody your own growth and embody your own happiness.
Yeah. And that's really the kind of leadership that I believe is called for right now. That is what future forging is. You're not even necessarily doing all that you're doing for the sake of, let me put on a show and let me make sure I'm making an impact and changing the world and creating a legacy. It's only when you flip that on its head and you put yourself and your soul first, and then what you want and you need in your marriage and your kids and the layers built on top of that. That's the only way that I believe we really can facilitate transformation that is genuine for people at this point. Otherwise, all we're doing is creating a new identity of, I was this person, now I'm that person, now I'm that person. But now, and I'm curious about this for both of you, who do you know yourselves to be? If you were to identify yourself or label yourself or describe in the way that you think about yourself, like, what do you reference, or how do you experience that process of, your identity now on the other side of a massive shift? Sorry to put you on the spot with a huge question, but that just came through.
That's great. That's exactly what I wanted in the dialogue. It's just real talk, and the realness of us all coming together again a year later, and the curiosity of all we opened, and what if we run through our systems and have really proofed, as Michelle Chatham would say, what have we proofed? And I feel like we have proofed very much from all of what was open during our time with you. And before I get to answering your question, one thing in what you and George were speaking about, which I understand now, as you talked about your career and the value and that you open to something different, what I believe is true as well is we came to a point where our relationship wanted to evolve. And all of what we went through, the experience, the telling of it, the sort of aftermath of 2 years, that kind of question, okay, well, for real? Is it real unconditional love? Can you really stand in that? George, when you say that, can you really stand in that you're here because you love unconditionally? And Jacqueline, everything I have taught and opened and practiced and learned, I had it all inside of me. And here I'm getting to the answer for me to your question, which is to say who I am. I had it all. I believe that was right. But our whole consciousness evolution of the energy in that realm shifted, and the dimension of what was true was altered in my system. And I really then began to walk a path of living it. I knew it. I was connected to the field of energy, what a mystic is, what it is to be intimate, what it is to be. I had walked away in myself from being wife. I'm done with that. That's dry and empty and boring, and I'm not doing it. If you talk to me about wife today, it's a privilege. It's an honor. I want that space in my life. And I know without a doubt, I want it with this man right here. And I couldn't have told you that before. Maybe it'll happen. I actually didn't believe it would happen. So who I know myself to be, I am a woman who can walk through the fire and stand up on the other side. And I am also a woman who can sit down in the midst of the hell of it and allow herself to feel that and not become consumed. And I've also learned I'm a woman who, in the moments when George, being all the man he is present with himself and something gets a little uncomfortable in me, and I can sit and watch old layers of protection burn themselves out. I can be vulnerable. Who I know myself to be is this embodiment of Jacqueline, who I'm living everything I would have told you I wanted to live, including the one thing I always thought was missing, which was the passion and the sexual intimacy. And I remember distinctly sitting in this room in our summer cottage, weeping. You asked me what I was afraid of. And my fear was that I would die with it all inside of me.
Yeah.
I am a woman who will not, because it's all coming out.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And it just brings me back to what stood out to you from when you heard me speaking about a culmination point.
Yes.
Right? Like, you had done so much work, you had discovered who you were. And it's interesting, as I was watching you, so much of your motion was here around your head as you were talking about the knowing of things, right? So it was that shift from kind of the knowing, and maybe it was trickling down into your being and your body and your essence, but now it's really pushed through your system and through your life and flushed out everything that is not true and is not in alignment with who you are, which was correct. And you knew that then. But
Yes.
to walk through, as you said, the fire of letting that burn up you and your life and the layers of protection and the marriage and the roles and all of that is the courage, is the leadership, is the path that leads you into this space now that I'm so thrilled to hear you describe. Like, everything that I wanted to live, I am now living. That's what it's all about, you know, especially for the feminine to be so raw in that desire and so uncertain of the path forward in that, and then to be sitting and standing and living in it, in the richness of the present moment, no longer seeking and searching and feeling broken and empty and incomplete, and in ways letting the masculine buffer and bandage that. You know, you're now your own sovereign, complete self within your body. Beautiful.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you. And I learned during my time with you to trust myself again for everything I had been through, not only in the experience of the community or another man, but even previous mentors. I learned how to trust myself again. And to trust myself, I've always seen the interweaving of two threads: the imprinting and the trauma and the pain body, and the truth and the wisdom and the genius and the gold. And I knew many years ago I was beginning to unravel and separate them. I would say I trusted myself then, but in a very different way. Like it's like a I trust myself. I trust. Yep. And now it's eyes wide open, fully looking at him. And in a moment, even when something might be uncomfortable, being able to go, okay, I got to say it for both of us, and allowing that space to be, because we know we're bonded. We know we're in this. We know it's happening and we're creating it. So that self-trust for me was probably my biggest embodiment, because if I don't trust me, I'm never going to trust him. It has to be. And that's for both of us. This last year especially has been, okay, right here, even when there's some tension here, right here, and then
Yes.
we're right here.
Yes. That really brought tears to my eyes when you talk about the self-trust piece. You know, I'm somewhat still in an industry that in many ways, unintentionally, and even while speaking the opposite, is leading people away from self-trust.
Yes.
And more into the offloading of their own power and sovereignty and knowing. And so I'm constantly watching myself, you know, and asking myself, am I doing my part in my goal to bring people back into themselves and into their soul and into that connection with God, source, the divine, and into their own trust and self-leadership? You know, that's the most important thing for me in everything that I do. And so to hear that from you is, it's a relief, but it's also, I don't know the words for it. It moves me so deeply. You know, for someone like you and George and so many people who have spent so much time doing the hard work, whether it's the hard work of being a mother and being a wife and just managing life, or being a father and a provider and managing all that is, or the hard work of uncovering your trauma and beginning to look at things in your life and realize it's not what you thought, and to go through all of that hard work, and then to be able to facilitate people pulling it through to the other side, through that culmination point where they start to understand the wealth of the soul and the richness of life as it was meant to be, and the way that all of this gets to be experienced and truly effortlessly flow through you. Not that there's not things that you still do, but it's effortless because you've dropped into this flow of miracles and support, and just, it's a different realm of life. It's a different mapping of how humanity experiences life, on top of this world that is so known for the difficulties of the 3D world, you know? So I don't know where all of that came from, but it's just beautiful to hear that from you. And especially in knowing that that was so much of my own journey, right? You know, to George's point of, it wasn't my intention, you know, to pave a path for men, but if that's happening, that's wonderful. It's the same for me. It was never my intention in my own journey to, what can I do with this in the world? How much money can I make with this in the world? That was never what pushed me forward. It was always my own finding and cleaning up and restoring that sense of wholeness that drove me forward.
You know, the trust word is so fundamental to all of us. I think, you know, as a man, you really trust in yourself that you know what needs to happen in order to be the leader that your family needs, the provider that your family needs, the protector that your family needs. And so sometimes, at least in my experience, that trust in just myself is very narrow vision. And one thing that was so important in our relationship with you, partnership, my mentor, or your mentorship in mentoring me, was that there was a feeling of trust of what you brought to me. So it allowed me to open up to look at things in a different way. And not that it was all about what was in the checking account, or that the chores were all completed, or the kids were all properly supported in their education or their extracurriculars or all of that, which was all outside of me. It was about who I truly wanted to be in my relationship with Jacqueline, and what that meant. And not, a lot of times we have a vision of what we want to get to, and we get there, and it's not what we expected at all. It's completely different, and you work so hard to get someplace that you perceived was the finish line, to realize that that finish line wasn't at all what you either expected or what you wanted. So it's important, at least in my experience, to continue to get quiet about truly what I want out of this life, and what I want out of this relationship, what I want out of this environment. And you were instrumental to that. It would not have transpired in the way that it did without the fundamental trust that I had in what you were saying to me and how it resonated inside of me. So we talk about trust inside of ourselves, but also as far as a mentor is concerned, there's a needed trust to be able to receive what you are presenting and providing to me. And that was absolute. That was absolute. I never questioned that ever. I listened to our recordings afterward to allow it to resonate inside of me. It changed my life. It changed my life in a way that, we talk about who we are, or who we perceive ourselves to be. I perceive myself now to be a person of depth, a person of strength, a person of real substance, and not just the esoteric, oh, well, you're the vice president of this, or you're the volunteer over here. All of these things are outside of you. And those are all fantastic to be part of your community and support your community. But ultimately, you're inside of yourself and what you truly are and what you truly want to be. And when you let that resonate, that's where the confidence and the strength come from to continue to be the leader that you want to be.
Without being depleted, as you said earlier.
Absolutely. Absolutely. One thing that we had talked about was that I would go into work, and I would work for 10 hours and just leave it all there at the office. And I would come home and I'd be completely drained, and I had absolutely nothing left. And that wasn't sustainable. It wasn't the word I'm looking for. It didn't get me where I wanted to be, because the job, the career was what I was using to say this is what I wanted. But yet when I got home, I had nothing left to be able to enjoy the fruits of all that labor and hard work that I had actually done outside. And so there's a real balance to that, to not be so consumed, and an awareness that sometimes when you're in the middle of it, it's like, all right, you're just drudging through it. You're putting your blinders on, you're getting over the finish line, but you don't realize what you've sacrificed in order to do that.
Yeah. To your point about trust and trust in a mentor and the trust in our relationship, it's so interesting to me. Something about this conversation feels so surreal to me, to be sitting here as how old am I? I'm 32 years old. I'm a 32-year-old woman. I just became a mother. In many ways, I know nothing about so much of life. But to be sitting here in front of two people who've walked through so much externally and internally in life, and to be someone who is trusted and to be someone who can provide value and facilitate you all, moving into all that you paved the path for, to be in the world and to receive and to enjoy, to your point, George, like it's indescribable. It's a gorgeous thing. And yeah, it's interesting too, what the other part about what you were saying, George, so much about coming back to what it is that you want, in your life, in your career, in your marriage. And I think it's such a open conversation for women about this, right? We're always talking about we're the martyrs and we sacrifice and our needs are always pushed aside. And this is like, okay for us to discuss. This is something that, society is looking at. But when it comes to men, you all have the same experience.
We do.
But in a different way. You've also cast aside all the things that you want and all the things that are true to you and all the things, maybe not all the things, but in many ways, the things that are fulfilling to you in pursuit of this job that you've been told that is yours, this role that you are expected to fulfill within the matrix. And so what do? We have women and men walking around playing parts that they don't even fucking want. They didn't sign up for this. Like they were just handed this pamphlet, maybe in preschool, I don't know. And here we are, we're all playing this game and living this show, and everybody's waving at each other and asking, how are you? Oh, I'm fine, thanks. And, closing the gate on their white picket fences, and nobody wants that, right? But
nobody wants that.
Nobody wants that.
And yet everybody is living. And as you say that, Mel, I don't think there are many people, unless they've watched my Facebook feed or been in our proximity for the last 2.5 years, who would ever have thought we have been through what we have, because we raised a beautiful family. George is a phenomenal provider. He's respected in the community, and all of that is real. And it ran its time out for us. The children were grown. There was no longer the need to have that family nucleus be the center of our world. That time was complete. And here we were, and no longer, to George's point of his mantra, no longer did what we had done work for us. It was very clearly now translucent. There was nothing behind it. There was not the foundation we would need to sit right here. I mean, now I listen to him and I'm weepy with the potency of who and what is inside this man. And I said to him a year ago, I think it was probably after we were complete with you, I said, there's a whole part of you I don't even know. I don't even know you. And I don't know. I think there's still truth to that. And I love that I'm still knowing more of him.
Yes.
But that's the thing. We can't just live empty. We don't want that. We want to deepen in and have the conversations. And even if it's not talking, we want the connection. We want to feel alive and create. That was one of my biggest things. Babe, I want to create. And 2019, fall of 2019, I remember saying that, and George saying, I'm all done with that. I've done that. I don't want to build anything. I've been building. I'm tired.
Yeah.
I'm tired. And that was absolute truth in him.
Yeah.
We can't sustain that. We have to drop in. I do want to pause. We're going to have another conversation. I know where I want to go. I want to start talking about what you call future forging and sort of break it down, because that was a big part of us coming into your world and you into ours. It also has been fundamental in us getting to where we are now and what I see as sort of the grid of what we are creating. And all of that vision and dialogue really came alive during our time with you. So we're just going to take a pause And yeah.
Thank you for sharing this time today. You can find and follow us on all major podcast platforms. We invite you to like, share, and be in touch. Find out more about Jacqueline and her work at JacquelineLRobinson.com. This is The Intimate Feminine, opening channels to deeper intimacy in sex, relationship, and love. This show is produced by Arlia Hoffman.